On today's episode, we're going to talk about how to identify strong leadership qualities and strong qualities of a business owner. Welcome to Thriving Launch with Luis Congdon and Kamala Chambers, the show for heart-centered entrepreneurs who want it all. Do you have a product or service that you would like to sell online? Or maybe you've been thinking about it, but you're reserved to do it because you need a website, you need complicated systems, and you need to spend money? Well, I've created a completely free course that teaches you how to use Facebook in a purely organic way. This means no ads and no money are needed. You can use Facebook completely free. So head on over to thrivinglaunch.com, opt into my Profit from Social Media course. I'm going to teach you the free methods to using Facebook to make money today.
We're here with Paul Pickett, the Chief Development Officer of Wild Birds Unlimited.
All right, Thriving Launchers, we are here with Paul Pickett. Paul, are you ready to launch?
I am ready to go.
So one of the things that I really love about your company is you guys have like mission statement to have diversity. Can you tell me a little bit about that and how it plays into the company and the business?
Yeah, absolutely. Wild Birds Unlimited is the name of the company. We are a franchise, as you stated, a franchise organization with over 330 franchised retail stores providing the joy of bird feeding via the best products out there to help people enjoy the hobby of backyard bird feeding and engagement with nature. And our mission statement is we bring people and nature together. And then we have a subtag of, and we do it with excellence because we have to have that expectation. The company has a very, very firm mission, vision, and values. And part of those values are just that focus on honesty, transparency, integrity, a focus on diversity. We are retailers. We don't control who walks in any one of our franchise store owners' individual businesses. And we want people who are going to embrace everybody because at the end of the day, we want everyone to enjoy birds and nature in their own environment and their own community. And so diversity is a very important thing, and just commitment to that brand promise of helping all of our customers across the US and Canada experience the joy of seeing a bird come to your backyard, sharing the joy of gathering more information about birds and how you can really help the environment, doing it very, very locally is very important to us.
I love that. And one thing that you guys are so good at is identifying quality business owners, because you're always looking for new franchise partners, I'm sure. And I'd love to hear from you. How do you identify who is going to have the best qualities of a business owner, and what are some of those characteristics?
Well, I think one of the biggest characteristics, and we are what we call a passion brand, and so we need people who are going to be passionate about building their own business enterprise and really developing the processes and procedures, or following ours, to really have a sustainable business that gives back, that has bottom line profitability, that provides a great stable work environment for their own individual teams. But they've also got to have that passion for engagement with nature, and you have to love people and want to do that at the same time. So it's very unique. There are many franchises that don't require owner operators, and so you're looking for just someone who is a strong business person. They've got all that acumen, and they're going to hire the individual operators. That's not our brand. There are a lot of the hair cutting franchises. They don't want anybody who actually cuts hair. That would weed those people out of their system, because they want people who are just going to manage the business. We want both. And so I guess the way that you identify that is to spend a lot of time talking to people. We do a lot of video conferencing, and asking a lot of questions and then listening a lot, because you want to make sure that you've got people who are driven, and you can tell by someone's drive by the questions they're asking. They're taking it seriously. They're doing their validation. They're talking to, it's one thing when I'm talking to a candidate who says, well, how many of your existing franchisees do I have to talk to? Versus a candidate who's looking to open their own Wild Birds Unlimited store that says, how many of your existing franchisees may I talk to? Because you know that they want to gather more intel to make a really good business decision.
So what I'm hearing, one of the things that you're looking for is a sense of kind of a go-getter attitude or enthusiasm, and they're not looking at, oh my God, how can I make this go by as fast as possible so I can just make money? They're interested in actually being invested in the process and growing something valuable.
That is absolutely true. We have a very well-defined process in the franchise development team, and it's a lot of work. It's a whole lot of work. I have friends of mine in franchise development with other brands who are like, oh my gosh, you really do put your candidates through the paces. I want people who want those to be put through the paces, because I want people who are going to make a really good decision, and putting them through those paces also identifies a very key quality, especially in retail, but I think for any business owner, and that's that relentlessness, that grit, that ability to say, you don't know what's going to happen today, but you're going to make the most of today. And those are the people who fare the best in our system, and I think in any business.
For someone who's maybe not really thriving in business, or maybe they're thinking about starting a business, what would you tell them is something that they need to develop in order to be successful?
Well, I think you need to educate yourself on the financial elements of a business. When I'm working with a candidate and I throw out some very common terms that most people who are probably listening to this podcast say, well, duh, but things like balance sheets and P&Ls and cash flow statements, and they understand, if they don't understand that, they can go get that skill set. There are so many resources available to them. So I think that would be a foundational one that I talk to our candidates all the time. Also, it's that leadership skills that you can develop. No, I don't believe that anyone is born a true leader. I think people are born with a propensity to, develop that skill set, but you need to be a leader. And that means you need to be self-aware and know how to motivate a team, know how to organize your time, understand the difference between being in control and being controlling. And I will tell you, you can develop that skill set.
One of the things that I find interesting, Paul, and I don't know if I'm sure that you have this happen in your life too, where it seems that there's this conversation that you're having with one person, but it's part of a bigger conversation, and this kind of this circle, and you might end the day, or at some point through your day, you go, man, that theme came up several times today. And one of the themes that I've heard, or at least kind of projected myself into as I was listening to you talk, was this thing about leadership and what a leader is and what a leader looks like. And reminds me of this video where this guy was talking about things that we are and things that we do. And leadership is one of those things that we do. It's not certainly something that we are, it's something that we do. And by doing it, we become that. Leadership is interesting too, because you can be a leader even if you're not promoted to a leadership role. You can be a leader by doing something and being that person, and then eventually people start looking to you as a leader. And I think that that's kind of something that you're saying there as well.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with that statement is that you don't need to, I'm not a big gigantic fan of org charts, because it does set up a hierarchy, and, sometimes people who are on a different level will interact with you differently, and they may not be as open to being as transparent and direct as they could be. But Yeah, I mean, there are people that I go to in this office who are on a totally different quote unquote level than I am, but because they have those leadership, they have developed that leadership quality in themselves, they can go and help me think through a situation. They can help me think through either it's a firestorm that I'm trying to deal with, or here's an opportunity that I really think somebody has, but I'm not saying it the right way. How would you say it? And that could be a, an administrative person who just has that sort of sensibility. It could be my CEO, my COO. It could be one of our coaches, a manager in another department, or even in my own department. And so that leadership of it comes from within. It is much more from an internal position rather than an external position, in my opinion.
One of the things that I really love about what you're saying, and just a really reminder for me in this conversation, sometimes I'll show up to projects that are outside of what Kamala and I do for a living, outside of our podcast, outside of our business. We'll show up to something, and Kamala has this ability to show up and say, okay, what needs to be done? And she asks herself that question without certainly even asking anybody, and she sees things that need to be done, or she'll ask that question if her mind doesn't give her that answer, which surprisingly she can come up with a lot of answers to areas where I'm just like, I show up and I don't know what to do. I'm kind of one of those lead weights that somebody kind of needs to move around and say, you over here and you do that, while Kamala's off running around racing and doing things. And an example of that is we recently went to a wedding, and it's one of our friends' weddings. We weren't in the wedding, so we weren't one of the leaders in the wedding. We were one of the people that were there to participate, but we showed up early to help out. And before I knew it, people were going up to Kamala and saying, okay, you're the wedding organizer. What should I do? And she was doling out jobs to people. And afterwards, we all chuckled about it because she just kind of showed up to help with the wedding. But soon, before she knew it, she was the wedding organizer.
Well,
Didn't
they
get
say
paid very well either.
yeah, exactly. You got an extra glass of champagne. Well, that there's a silly saying, but I love it. Is that if you want something done, ask the busiest person you know, because they're usually the people who know how. They're locked and loaded to organize and direct in a kind fashion and figure out the things that you wouldn't have thought needed to be figured out.
So, Paul, that's a really great note to kind of wrap this up. I want to ask you, is there any last lingering thoughts here that you want to leave our community with as we wrap this show up?
Well, if I had to say one thing, I think one of the things that we have here at Wild Birds Unlimited that sort of comes from the top down is that culture of making sure that you know how you did all the time. It's something that Jim Carpenter, it's a how do we do culture. And we have an expectation that whenever we're working together here internally in the Franchise Support Center, we're always asking each other, how did we do? We have an expectation that we ask our franchisees constantly, how did we do? We actually use a third party to help us called Franchise Business Review that reviews hundreds of brands every year about their satisfaction. Same questions, all these different brands. A little braggy, sorry, but number 2 out of all those brands, and this year, number 1 in retail. But we also expect our franchisees to ask their team members to ask them, each other. It's really that constant feedback. I think that's the only way to really get ahead in business, is asking how you're doing also gives you information on what you've left undone. And it gives you those windows of opportunity to say, hey, what if we did this? Could this be better for everybody? So
that's great. Thank you so much, Paul. Now, Thriving Launches, one of the things I'm reminded of is what gets measured gets done. And Paul was leaving us with a really great tip is ask for feedback. Ask for your customers to give you feedback. Ask for your partner to give you feedback, your kids. Ask people in your life, how do you think I'm doing? How are things going? Is there some things that you would like to see different? Are there things that you're enjoying about our life or our business or my management? And that feedback can help you really grow. And another thing that Paul did that I really appreciate and just want to point out for you guys is Paul doted on himself a little bit. He talked about how great the company was doing. And Thriving Launchers, I want to encourage you as you're seeking to get feedback, don't be afraid to dote on yourself or take some of that feedback that's positive and let it kind of ruminate in your mind as well, because that stuff is very important, that we celebrate our wins and that we're asking for feedback. And when we get some positive feedback, we let it just kind of stir around in our minds so we can celebrate and continue that momentum. And if it's not great, follow it up with something better, improve, and then give yourself some sort of mental reward, just as Paul did there. So Thriving Launchers, it's been great to be with you today. We'll catch you on the next episode, and keep thriving.
You've been listening to the Thriving Launch podcast. For books and resources related to today's episode, make sure to head over to thrivinglaunch.com. We'll see you there.